Hey everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. Today we're diving into the fascinating world of GitHub, the beloved platform for developers that's become synonymous with code collaboration and open source projects. Seriously, if you're in tech, you've probably heard of GitHub, but have you ever thought about just how much it shapes our coding culture? So, let's start at the top. GitHub isn't just a place to host your code, it's like the social network for developers. You can collaborate, share, and even fund projects through something called GitHub sponsors, which is pretty neat, right? I mean, imagine being able to support your favorite open source developers directly. That brings a community vibe that's pretty unique in the tech space. And if you're wondering about security, oh boy, GitHub is really onto it. They have tools in place to help find and fix vulnerabilities in your code. This is super important because, let's face it, security breaches can be not only damaging but devastating. It's like the digital equivalent of locking your door at night, something we can't overlook. Now let's talk about automation because GitHub has made some seriously cool moves in this area. With GitHub Actions, you can automate your workflow, which, if you ask me, is a game changer. It's kind of like having your own personal assistant for coding. I mean, who wouldn't want to automate the boring parts and focus on the creative solutions instead? And speaking of creativity, there's also GitHub Codespaces. This gives you instant development environments right in your browser. No more fussing with setup or configuration, just jump straight into the fun stuff. It's like having all your tools laid out before starting a DIY project, only in this case, you're building software instead of a new bookshelf. Now, I'm curious, how many of you have used GitHub Issues for planning and tracking your work? It's such a handy tool for staying organized, especially in team projects. That kind of structure can really change the game when you're juggling multiple tasks. And don't forget about the vibrant community aspect. GitHub's discussions feature is like hosting a forum where you can talk outside of just code. You can brainstorm ideas, get help, or even talk about the latest trends in technology. It makes the whole experience feel less isolated, which is super important, especially in remote work situations. Before we wrap up, let me ask you all this. How has GitHub influenced your workflow or your projects? I'd love to hear about your experiences or any tips you have for maximizing its power. So to sum things up, GitHub is not just a tool. It's a vital part of the developer ecosystem that enables collaboration, creativity, and community engagement. And by prioritizing security and automation, it keeps us all moving forward, no matter what stage we're at. Thanks for tuning in today. I hope you learned something new about GitHub and how it can make your coding life a little easier. Until next time, keep coding and stay curious.